Thank you. Thank you very much. As a, bring up my slide deck here if you can punch it up. As a weather guy, you should live near me. I actually live in Toronto, and it's very bizarre. I flew out yesterday afternoon, and literally 45 miles south of my front door, we can see the weather streamers coming into Buffalo. We got beautiful blue sunshine 45 miles north of me. My son's at university, and he's got streamers coming in. They've had 3 feet of snow. We're smack dab in the middle with absolutely nothing going on. So as a weather guy, you probably want to move up there, a little bit more of a challenge. Not that Colorado weather is boring or anything. So I've been out speaking on the circuit for about 20 years. I do a lot of conference events. I go to Vegas, I go to Orlando, I go to Phoenix, I go to Palm Springs, you know, all those convention centers. And oftentimes I find myself on stage 8:30 in the morning. You know, second day of a conference, you know, 1,000 executives attending the conference. And it's about 10 years ago I finally figured out what I do for a living. Somebody said, "What do you really do?" And I said, "Well, I go out and I talk to large groups of hungover people." That's essentially what you do when you're in Phoenix, you know, Las Vegas. So I got invited down to Denver to come to talk about highways. And, you know, Denver, Colorado. And I just thought, it's like a noon conference. Man, the people are going to be mellow because we all know what's going on in Denver. And I'm like, what a bunch of straights. This is so disappointing. So my job here today is to get you thinking a little about the future of transportation. And there is a lot going on in transportation, a lot of vested interest in the room. We have biking people, we have train people, we have people, you know, focused on highways, we have people focused on every single aspect. I'm going to talk about the future of cars, the future of automobiles, the future of, you know, what is happening with our highway systems. Because I think what is going on is we live in a period of time that involves some transformational decisions. What do we do as a state to ensure that we survive and thrive in the 21st century? What do we do in terms of the investment decisions we make, the political decisions that we make, the decisions we make about how we are going to try to position ourselves in an economy which is changing very, very quickly? And, you know, I've talked about the future of transportation before. I was actually invited in by NASA's Goddard Space Center last year to talk to them about the future of transportation and the future of space. Now imagine getting a phone call from those people, and you're kind of thinking, this is NASA. This is the group that built the Hubble telescope. These are people who are tracking small particles billions of light years from Earth. These are the people who are pulling in vast streams of data from the interstellar heavens. And they want me to come in and talk to them about the future. I tell you, when you get that kind of phone call, it freaks you out a little. You kind of freak out. You go, my God, these are people who are building the future. What the heck can I possibly tell them? But when I went in to speak to them, I opened with 3 statistics, 3 observations, 3 quotes that for me really put in perspective the nature of the world that we find ourselves within today. The very first, I'll use the same statistics with you. The very first comes from a study that was done in Australia. And down there, they're looking at the education system, they're looking at the evolution of careers, they're looking at how quickly science is evolving, jobs are evolving. They've come to the conclusion that we are in a situation right now in which there is so much change going on that they believe 65% of children who are in preschool today will work in jobs or careers that do not yet exist. Think about that. If you have a granddaughter or grandson, niece, nephew, daughter, son, who's in kindergarten and grade 1, the likelihood is 7 out of 10 are going to work in a job or career that doesn't even yet exist. But let me spin that around, because you are witnessing right now the emergence of these careers in front of your very eyes. How many of you today carry around a smartphone? Hold up your hands, show of hands. Everybody's got a smartphone, right? You know, there's a study done in the US. Your social standing, the way your friends judge you today, is very much based upon the technology you carry around. In other words, you go to a party you take out a flip phone, people are kind of looking at, what a loser, you got something from the olden days. You know, look at that person there. You know, think about that, but think about what's going on. We've got smartphones in our pockets. We've got GPS in our pocket. And in the last 10 years, 15 years, you all know this, in the world of transportation, we've seen the rapid emergence of all these spatial, S-P-A-T-I-A-L, geographic-oriented databases. And we have witnessed the emergence of a profession of people known as location intelligence professionals. Think about that phrase, location intelligence professionals. And what they are doing is they are writing business applications, they're writing scientific applications, they are coming up with ideas and ways to understand our world and interact with our world and connect our world and command our world in ways we weren't even, dreaming about 15 years ago. Second observation comes from the world of US science education. Instead of you taking any type of degree today based on science, anything agriculture, anything architecture, engineering, medical, anything having to do with technology, we're in a situation in which there is so much change going on. It is estimated that if we're taking a university degree, half of what we learn in our very first year of college or university is obsolete or revised by the time we graduate. That's the context of the speed of change in which we find ourselves today. And how can we talk about the future of transportation? How can we talk about opportunities for Colorado to position itself in the global economy with the future of transportation when we have so much change going on so quickly? Technology change is overwhelming. And I spent some time with a digital camera manufacturer, talking with the CEO. He indicated when they bring the typical digital camera to the marketplace today, they figure they've got about 3 to 6 months to sell it before it's obsolete. Instant obsolescence. We're in a situation right now in which Apple is in a position where 60% of its revenue comes from products that did not exist 4 years ago. And cast your mind out to the future of transportation. Cast your mind out to what type of vehicle we might be driving 10 years out. Cast your mind out to where we might be in terms of the sophistication of the highway infrastructure network or light rail transportation network or the bicycle network that we have in place to support the younger generation and their new way of thinking about what transport is. And cast your mind out to the world of Uber, which is redefining the concept of what travel is in the leisure and business market. And that's why my favorite phrase comes from the global media magnate Rupert Murdoch. He observed years ago, there is so much change going on. It's so all-encompassing. It's coming at us so quickly. It's not the big organizations that will win and own and control the future. It's the fast. The future belongs to those who are fast. The future belongs to those who can ingest rapid ideas, new technologies, keep up with change, ingest that change, and position themselves for the economy of the 21st century. And one thing I always like to do with an audience is sort of ask, well, how do you think you're doing with that? So what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to take out your smartphone. So, okay, you got a flip phone, take it out, we're not going to laugh. We're going to do a little text message poll here. I want to ask you the question, when it comes to the fast future, how do you think you're doing? How well are you prepared? And here's what you do. You send a text message to the number 22333. If you think you are extremely well positioned for success, regardless of who you are, regardless of your responsibility, in the body of the message, punch in 879028. If you're under the age of 25, you know how to tweet, send a tweet to @poll space one of these numbers. We'll get your vote in. And I'm going to tell you, there's the first under 25 right there. I want to tell you two little stories. Well, we're waiting to see how Colorado is feeling about your opportunity to be positioned for success in a world in which the future belongs to those who are fast. Last year, I was down in Austin, Texas. I was with the Texas Credit Union League. I had 600 CEOs for credit unions, large and small, from throughout the great state of Texas in the room. And I put out this text message poll. And I'm up on stage, I'm sort of looking around, the average age seemed to be 60 plus. And I could see a whole bunch of CEOs going, I don't know how to text. Do you know how to text? I don't know what to do here. My grandkids always want me to text. You know, maybe I'll figure it out one day. Out of that room of 600 CEOs, 3 people managed to get in a vote. 3 people. Think about what's going on in the world of banking in terms of fast-paced change. The iPhone 6 just came out. It's now a credit card. The credit cards in our pockets are about to disappear because our cell phones are about to become credit cards. And here I've got a room full of CEOs who barely know how to use the technology, which is going to completely revolutionize their industry. Contrast that to a couple of weeks later, I went in my son's high school. They brought me in to talk to 300 kids about future careers. They brought the kids into the auditorium. I walk out on stage. And I said, you know, I understand, I'm in a high school. I understand the rules in high school. You are not supposed to use your cell phones in class. Take them out because we're going to do a poll. And 297 out of 300 kids responded in the first 35 seconds. When you are talking about the challenges of getting up the highway and the weather reports, you know, that generation is doing it in a completely different way. In terms of social information sharing, in terms of reporting live in real time to each other about what is going on in the highway. How do we deal with that rate of change? How do we deal with that generation? Well, we're not very convinced that we're well prepared. I've been up here 5 minutes, I got you freaked out already. You know, look, we've got 175 people in the room who are saying, you know, well, we're only somewhat positioned for success. We're behind in our ability to keep up. 9 people in the room completely freaked out. Whoa, this guy's scaring me. Now, 28 people in the room have voted, we are extremely well positioned for success. I know who these people are. These people are sales executives, okay? They got up this morning, they looked in the mirror, it's going to be a great day. I'm going to close a deal. It's kind of fascinating to think about, you know, how we perceive what is going on. And this is where I spend my time. This is where I, you know, work with my clients. I mean, everybody has had me in, everybody from, you know, Disney, Nestle, Toshiba Australia, Rockwell Collins, PGA of America, talk about the future of golf. What do we do in the world of golf when change is happening so quickly? And yes, NASA. And I tell you, when you get booked by somebody like NASA to talk to them about the future, it freaks you out. When you drive in the main gate the next morning, 70,000 people go into NASA's Goddard Space Center through the main gate. And they got my name up in lights. And I mean, you're spazzing out because these are astrophysicists. So a few days before in the office, I was preparing my PowerPoint deck, trying to figure out what am I going to talk about. What can I possibly talk to NASA about? Well, I thought to myself, they're probably only ever going to have me in one time. Right? They will probably never invite me back. So if I'm going in there, I have to go in and make an impression and talk about the future. So I went in and I decided I'm going to talk about George Jetson. What the heck? I mean, in NASA, one shot. You got one chance to get in there. I'm going to go and talk about George Jetson. So I went on to images.google.com. I found this picture of George Jetson. I put it up in NASA. Here's what I'm going to talk about. Found this other picture of George Jetson. You know, this is what we need to think about in terms of the future. But why would I possibly be talking to NASA about George Jetson? Remember the Jetsons? 1960s cartoon series. Set in the year 2062. And as a kid, I'm 8 years old, 9 years old, I'm watching it, looking at the future. Here's the future. Think about what George Jetson is doing on screen. George is using FaceTime. He's having Skype conversations with his boss. He is getting his news off the internet. And this was set in the year 2062. We've been doing this for years already. The point I was trying to make to NASA was this. We live in a period of accelerating change. What used to be science fiction is all of a sudden becoming real. And it's happening faster. So, I'm getting my PowerPoint together. I'm thinking, they're only going to have me in one time. I really got to go for it. I cannot go into NASA and not talk about Spock. I mean, come on. You got one shot. You got to talk about Spock. So I found this picture. Okay, where are the hardcore Trekkies in the room? Hold up your hands. Okay, they're out there. Okay, these people are about to get all stressed out because apparently about 2 years ago when I put this picture up, somebody said, that's actually not the right picture. He's not actually doing that. It's a different episode. They get really spazzed out about details. Doesn't matter. I like the picture. Here's the story. I'm going to use the story. So, what Spock is holding in his hands here is a medical tricorder. Science fiction concept from the 23rd century. I probably haven't even got the right century for Star Trek. A science fiction concept, a medical tricorder that he could hold up to the side of his head and instantly determine, wow, is this when the audience gets mellow or something? It's kind of freaky. Yeah, never, they just turn the power off when you're on stairs. So instantly, determine whatever medical condition you ever had, whatever medical condition you're likely to ever develop. What a fantastic concept. Could you imagine if we had such a device in our lives? Well, we are in the 21st century. We have groups of people, we have organizations out there who are challenging the global scientific community to solve some of the biggest challenges of our time, having to do with the environment, having to do with healthcare, having to do with transportation, having to do with energy. And so Qualcomm, one of the world's largest manufacturer of computer chips, gets involved with this thing called the X Prize, puts out a $10 million challenge to the global scientific community to develop the medical tricorder as dreamed about in Star Trek. The reason I talked to NASA about this is because at NASA's Ames Research Laboratory out in California, a group of 25 scientists, 25 folks who work at NASA, have used crowdfunding initiatives to accelerate the future and develop what is known as the Xanadu Scout, the medical tricorder that was supposed to be here in the 23rd century. And now it's 2012, and it's already here. They're shipping this within the month. Folks, we live in a period of time in which predictions that seem like us to be science fiction, in the reality of when they occur, a period of time is collapsing. And we need to think about the decisions that we are making as to how we position ourselves for the future. Let's have a little bit of a reality check here. It's my Las Vegas sobriety slide, right? I put this up 8:30 in the morning. Nobody laughs. I know the audience is like completely toast. Everybody laughed. Okay, you're not doing the Denver pot thing, apparently. Think about what is going on. You know what's happening? I deal with a lot of CEOs, I deal with a lot of industries, deal with a lot of different people in every single sector. And what I am seeing is a realization that we are living in a period of time that involves massive, transformative change. It's going on in agriculture, it's going on in medicine, it's going on in transportation, it's going on in energy. You will all certainly know the company PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric. The CEO is going in September to open a conference of fellow CEOs to talk about the future of the energy industry. He realizes that there is massive, sweeping change that is occurring that involves massive transformation of the industry. And he wanted to emphasize to his audience how big that change is. Somehow they found me, and they ended up bringing me down to San Francisco, and we ran around the city and filmed for a half a day and put together a video, which I want to share. Here's a really interesting question to think about. Could you be MP3'd? What's going to happen in a world in which one customer is generating their own energy, another customer is generating their own energy, and they say to each other, hey, why don't we share a little bit of energy? Think about the music industry. Think about what happened when MP3s first appeared on the scene. All of a sudden, consumers were in control of how they consumed media. And what did some media organizations do? They fought back. They fought the customer. Think about Sony. Sony was once a really cool brand. They had the Sony Walkman, and then they went to war with their customers. In the future, you're going to be hearing a lot about microgrids. You're going to be in a world in which more consumers are generating their own backyard solar and wind and other forms of power. We live in a world in which the rapid advancements of battery technology is going to lead to fundamental change. And as this occurs, we will have customers who will be generating their own electricity and talking to their neighbors and talking to their friends and doing what they did in the MP3 world. Now think about the speed of technological change and how quickly this technology becomes a part of our daily life. Think about what's happening in the world of banking. The big trend that is going to unfold is the credit cards in our pockets are going to disappear because our cell phones are going to become credit cards. And all of a sudden, banks are going to find that they're competing with companies like Google, Facebook, and PayPal, companies that innovate a lot faster than they do. It's also the speed with which the change is occurring. When radio came out, it took 38 years to reach 50 million people. When television came out, it took only 13 years. When the internet arrived on the scene, it only took 4 years to reach 50 million people. iPads came out, it took only 3 years. And put it in the context of mobile devices. You know, just over a quarter of a century ago, there were 4.7 billion people on the planet, and there weren't any cell phones. And today we're in a world of 7 billion people with 6 billion mobile devices. The potential for the mobile device in our energy world is absolutely staggering. Imagine a world in which I can easily control the cost of my energy spend, but not just that. Imagine a world in which I have control as a consumer over my energy inputs through my mobile device. I could choose solar, I could choose wind, I could choose microgrid. You know, we are emerging into a world in which increasingly this is becoming the window into our world, and in which the consumer will be making decisions not only about cost, but about source. It has staggering implications because it's a world in which the consumer increasingly is in control. The speed of innovation in every single industry is shifting from that industry over to Silicon Valley and technology companies. It's happening in the world of insurance. We're seeing the emergence of GPS performance tracking devices that monitor driver behavior. If you show good driving behavior, you're stopping at all the stop signs, you're not accelerating too fast, you get a rebate on your insurance. It's happening in the world of healthcare, the rapid emergence of health and wellness apps, tracking devices that track your athletic behavior. And all of a sudden what is happening is the healthcare sector is discovering innovation is no longer occurring just in the healthcare sector. Technology companies are driving that change. And it's happening in the world of utilities. Traditional HVAC equipment is becoming interconnected. It's becoming plugged together. It's becoming intelligent. What are utilities going to do in a world where the consumer is in control of how they use their energy, the energy they choose to use, how they choose to change their personal energy infrastructure through the connectivity that is part of their lives? Your industry is being redefined. It's being redefined by technology. It's being redefined by the customers. It's being redefined at a furious rate of speed. And your choice is to innovate, change, and adapt so that you turn these trends into opportunity. You embrace the future, become a part of the future, and redefine the future with your customers. Imagine a world 5 years out in which I arrive at Denver International Airport and I have my phone and I summon up the choice of vehicle I want, the source of power for that vehicle, the current best social networking insight on the best route to get to Vail, which might include a drone helicopter to overfly transportation networks. Is that science fiction? Is that too ridiculous? Imagine what happens when all of a sudden we have a generation that views their world through the mobile device that is part of their life. What we are witnessing in the world of transport, what we are witnessing in every single industry is massive disruption. We live in a period of time in which people are coming up with ideas and are saying just because we've always done it that way doesn't mean we have to do it this way in the future. And this is a global trend. And very much the future economic potential and success of Colorado depends upon the decisions it makes as to how it will participate in this emerging infrastructure. Are you well prepared? Are you well positioned? Are you in a mindset that you can truly play a role? Well, let's try another little poll and see what you have to say. How convinced are you? You know, the fact that you've got a sold-out crowd here today due to the efforts of CDOT and the Chamber of Commerce, 500 people interested in the future of transportation in this state. Are you well positioned? Send a text to 22333. Yes, no, or you're not convinced yet that this is really important. And while we're waiting to see what the room is collectively thinking, I'll tell you another little story. 5 years ago, you might have gone to a conference. And you might have come into the back of the room and they handed you a little polling technology stick. Remember that? It was like a TV remote control, had 4 buttons on it. To outfit a room for this size audience with that hardware-based solution would have probably cost upwards of $100,000. That hardware technology is now dead, obsolete, gone. Because all I'm doing is I'm using the technology you have in your pocket and a Wi-Fi connection, and using the capabilities of the cloud. And imagine a world in which we all of a sudden have the capability, you know, should we look at an alternate route, let's do a crowdsourcing vote on what is the best highway traffic solution to get down to Colorado Springs, given that there's an issue with the main route. What happens in a world in which everybody can vote? What happens in a world in which everybody communicates through their wireless devices with instantaneous feedback? And look at the room, we're a little torn. You know, we've got some folks that think we're well positioned. We've got some folks who think we're not very well positioned. And we've got, you know, another group of folks who aren't convinced yet that this is really important. Well, let's think about what's going on. Think about what is about to happen. Bill Gates once made the observation, people tend to overestimate the rate of change that occurs in a 2-year basis. They underestimate the rate of change that occurs in a 10-year basis. Do we think our highways, do we think our infrastructure, do we think our transportation system 10 years out is going to look anything like it does today? It's not. I'm going to talk about 5 big issues. And talk about bold thinking, and talk about velocity, hype versus reality, elements of progress, generations. I can only find clip art that went 1, 2, 3, couldn't find one for 5. So bold thinking, business transformation. What is going on in the world today is there are a lot of folks who are realizing they can change entire industries in a very significant way. You know, back in 2003, I was brought over to Stuttgart, Germany. I was brought over by Daimler Chrysler. This was the newly merged group of Mercedes-Benz and Chrysler. And it was a small strategic planning meeting. And it was talk about the future of the automotive industry. It was focused on what is the auto industry going to look like in the year 2013. So they had 10 senior auto executive engineers from Chrysler. They had 10 senior executive auto engineers from Mercedes-Benz. And they brought in me, Jim Carroll, Futurist. And you know what they talked about for their first hour, trying to frame what 2013 would look like? They talked about what their existing competition would do. Ford's going to do this, Chrysler's going to do that, GM is going to do this, Toyota's going to do this, Honda's going to do that. In their mind, it never crossed their mind that their industry could change. And I told them that. But an hour in, I got frustrated. I said, look, folks, you know, you could be facing competition in 2013 from a company in the auto industry that isn't even in the auto industry today. This is not going to happen. Billions of dollars. It costs billions of dollars to build an auto manufacturing facility. I said, no, it could happen. We live in a world in which there are people who are out to disrupt industries, bold thinking, big ideas. And they said, give us an example. Well, that moment in time, I had my laptop open. I had Google Maps on the screen. Remember Google Maps was first appearing in 2003? Remember how cool that was? You went and looked at that picture of your house from space. Whoa, look at that. It's not like you hadn't seen your house before. We were all mesmerized. And I'm looking at Google Maps and I said, you know, how about this? We could have a couple of auto engineers, Google engineers at Google headquarters in Mountain View, California right now. And they're looking at Google Maps and one of those engineers says to the other Google engineer, hey, this is really cool. We should build a car around this. And what I started describing to these auto engineers, Mercedes-Benz, Chrysler, was that Google, in becoming a car company, not actually going to build the car. 21st century, you don't actually have to do this stuff. They're simply going to line up an existing car manufacturer in Brazil, India, China, Tennessee, Colorado, doesn't matter. I said they're going to be very big in logistics, partnerships. They're going to have the car delivered to you via FedEx. It's going to come in a box. You're going to buy the thing online because nobody likes to go and buy a car from a car dealer. These guys are looking at me like I'm kind of weird. And I said, you know what? Google understands there's this thing called social marketing, networking, viral buzz. When you open up your Google car in the box, you're going to discover the Google car party in a box. It's going to be streamers and hats and confetti and wine. You're going to throw a party with all your neighbors and have the Google car party because you got the coolest car on the planet. How do you think these very serious auto engineers in Stuttgart, Germany are reacting to the concept of Google becoming a car company? Maybe what's going through your minds? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Isn't that what we do when we're confronted by the future? Fast forward to 2012, Tesla Motors out of California, founded by folks like Elon Musk, the fellow who is changing the business of space with SpaceX, which was part of my focus with the talk with NASA, and founded by the two equity founders of Google, and it is completely changing the concept of the auto industry. You go to a high-end fashion mall in Scottsdale, Arizona, and next to the high-end fashion clothing, there's a Tesla Motors dealership. What is happening out there right now is there are people who are looking in industries and they're thinking in big and bold ways. Let's come back to the Jetsons. Remember the Jetsons? Remember the flying car? Wouldn't that be cool if I was going to Vail and I just didn't have to deal with highways and I just had the flying car and I just hop in the thing and go? What a stupid, ridiculous, fantastical idea. I'd encourage you to go look at the website of Terra Fugia out of Spain, where they have actually developed and are bringing to market a flying car. Do we go, this is the dumbest idea we ever heard? Or do we sit back and we challenge ourselves to think that, look, 20 years out, there might have been so much change that we might barely recognize what it looks like today compared to where it was yesterday. A lot of talk about autonomous vehicle technology, a lot of talk about self-driving cars, a lot of talk about vehicles of the future. And all I know as a futurist is this. Right now, we drive our cars. At some point in the future, the majority of the vehicles we drive, we will not be interacting with them. We will be passengers in autonomous vehicle technology. And you go back to the Vail Epic Pass and you go back in the impact on tourism and imagine being the first state that has an intelligent highway infrastructure by which the consumer is drawn to the state not only by the Vail Epic Pass, but by the fact that they don't actually have to drive there because they are met by a vehicle at Denver's airport which auto steers them along the intelligent highway and through the weather and through the storms with weather updates from our friend and gets them there, maybe on time. All I know is at some point in time in the future, this is going to be a reality. You know, the fascinating article appeared in a scholarly publication. And what the article said is, if you think about what is going on, cars have been the same for the last 100 years. They've all had the same DNA. Internal combustion engines, powered by oil. But if you think about what is going on, there is a massive change to the DNA of vehicle technology. Alternate power, a lot of technology, self-guiding technology. For the first time since the invention of technology, we are witnessing a revolution. And there are big, bold decisions being made that have economic implications. Tesla, in redefining the concept of what vehicles are and how vehicles are powered, won out over Colorado and other states to build its advanced battery technology plant in Nevada. There are entire industries being born around the future of transportation. What bold stake are you going to put in the ground to make sure you participate? Isn't that what we're talking about here? Isn't that what we're talking about when we're talking about the potential for a degree of taxation to raise funds so that we can do a little bit more than we have in the past? Isn't that what we're talking about when we're talking about the next generation and how they are rejecting the concept of actually buying a vehicle? And what do we do about that? How do we fit that in our plans? And isn't that what we're talking about when we're talking about the expansion of bicycle infrastructure transportation? Because everything is changing at a furious pace. And here's where it's interesting. What is happening in every single industry today, the speed of change, is now being dictated by Silicon Valley. You know what is happening? One of the most fascinating trends occurring in the world today is that every device which is a part of our daily life is about to become plugged into the internet. We're going to have awareness of its status, and we're going to be aware of its location. Okay, this could get freaky. This could get out of hand. You know, I was speaking at a healthcare conference in Kansas City last week, and I said, it could get one morning I'll get up my weigh scale. It's going to send an email to my fridge, don't let Jim in today. He's not living up to terms of his, wellness contract, but I'm down 40 pounds from my peak. I have a Withings Wi-Fi body scale. I get up in the morning, go down to the home office naked. My poor wife has put up with this. Takes my BMI, takes my body fat mass, takes my weight, transmits it to a Wi-Fi password protected website that builds all these cool charts and graphs, which help me understand I'm on the right path. What happens when our world becomes connected? What happens where we have thermostats by which we can control our personal energy infrastructure management, as you saw in that video? I'm going to choose solar. I'm going to choose wind. You got a little bit of energy. I got a little bit. We shared MP3s. Let's share energy. What happens in a world where cell phones become credit cards? What happens in a world where we have a lot of technology that is a part of our life? And here's where it gets really interesting in terms of the future of transportation. How many of you have a smart TV? Hold up your hands. Everybody's got a smart TV, right? How many of you use the features on your smart TV? Nobody, right? Articles are appearing. No one can use smart TVs because it sucks. They're really difficult to use. I got a TV, it's got YouTube on it, it's got Twitter, it's got Netflix. I have devices in my home. I can get onto Netflix 37 different ways. It's bizarre. Well, nobody uses smart TVs because what has happened here is television companies that build TVs, have suddenly tried to make them technology-oriented. They have no idea what they're doing. Same thing has happened with cars. A 2012 car today could have a system originally designed in 2006, put into production in 2008, is finally hitting the street in 2012. And we all have these cars with this fancy technology, and we can't figure it out. See, you spin this knob here, and you double-click here, and you try to open this, and then you press down the knob, and don't forget. Anybody try to use all the features they have in their car? It's impossible. Because what we have are car companies trying to figure out technology. But here's where it's really interesting. Anybody own an Apple TV? You know how easy an Apple TV is to use compared to a smart TV? Anybody, how many of you have actually sat in the cab of a Tesla Motors vehicle have actually gone in. That's the future of transportation. It is staggeringly easy. It is staggeringly intuitive. It is staggeringly connected. It is staggeringly intelligent. And what we have happening here is an acceleration of change, because what we know goes on, once technology gets hold of an industry, it accelerates the rate of change in that industry. Think about what could happen with our cars just 5 years from now. We're going to have a Siri button in every single car. Apple's cutting deals with every single car manufacturer, so we're going to talk to our car just as we talk to our phone. Siri, I would like to know the weather conditions right now on the road to Vail. Siri's going to respond. It's going to be a part of our car. What we're going to have are augmented reality heads-up display screens. Anybody who's a skier or a snowboarder, you have those Burton or Oakley goggles. Seen those? They have augmented reality built into them. You got a kid going down the hill. They're getting real-time Twitter updates in their goggles. They're getting real-time FaceTime messages. They're getting real-time Facebook messages. They are getting real-time information on how fast they're skiing, how many miles they've skied. They're getting location intelligence in their goggles as to where their friends are. You always want to be behind this person because they're not really paying attention to what they're doing. But that technology is going to be in our cars within 5 years, because all the manufacturers are working with this stuff. We're going to have glasses-free 3D dashboards. We're going to have interactive in-car billboards. Speaking of the real estate conference, I'm looking for 5 properties in the area, Siri. You know, that have 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and a swimming pool. Siri's going to respond, I found the following 3. Would you like me to take you there? Yes. And the augmented driving system takes over and auto steers me around for a tour of the neighborhood. Science fiction. It's going to be here one day. And what are we going to do about that? What we know is that the speed of innovation has shifted from Detroit to Silicon Valley. I'm almost up to my time here. And I still have 3 issues to go. So I'll be very conscious of my time. And then we have the discordance of hype versus reality. You've all seen Elon Musk with his hypertube. We're going to build this, fantastic transportation system that's going to move people, in 15 minutes from San Francisco to LA. We got these articles that appear in the New York Times that Morgan Stanley predicts the death of the auto industry as we know it. And we're torn. What is hype? What is reality? What is real? When I went into NASA, I found this book called Wasn't the Future Wonderful? And what this book had was all these articles from Popular Mechanics, Modern Mechanics magazine in the 1920s and 1930s. And it's fascinating to look back at. Articles, is man, doomed by the machine age? Some predictions were bang on. We're all going to have more leisure time. Remember those predictions? We were all going to have to work only 4 or 5 hours a week because computers were going to do all the work. We had predictions that we would have television shown in theaters. Wasn't that what we have at home now? We had predictions in the 1920s we would get our newspaper by radio. Isn't that the internet? We had predictions that we would get home movies from phonograph records, DVDs. They were talking about this in the 1920s. They were talking at the 1938 World's Fair about self-driving cars. And back then, people always dismissed the future. They were talking back then about the fact that we were going to put people into space. We were going to fly people to the moon. And we had skeptics who were coming out and saying, this science fiction future will never come true. We had the New York Times in 1920 make a bold statement that a rocket will never be able to leave the Earth's atmosphere. Well, they didn't get that quite right, did they? And this is why you need to think big and bold about the future. Back in 2012, 4 days after President Obama was reelected, I was the opening keynote speaker for the Texas Municipal League. I had 2,000 elected officials and municipal representatives for cities and towns from throughout the great state of Texas to talk to them about the need to make bold decisions to invest in the future. in Texas, 4 days after the re-election of President Obama. What did I do? Well, I walked out on stage and said, look, folks, we got to talk about the 7 stages of election grief. Like, I know where you are. I know where you're going through. Some of you are in the shock phase, you're in the anger stage. You need, as elected officials, to move on to the acceptance and hope phase. Your job as elected officials is to do what you need to do to ensure that your municipality, your state, is positioned for the future. You remember the 1800s? When we put in the intercontinental railroad system, towns died or didn't die based on whether they were on the main line. When they built the 1950 Eisenhower highway system, towns withered or died based on whether they were on one of the interstates. The same thing is happening today. You know, we have a $1 billion town being built in New Mexico, by which companies like Google, companies testing autonomous vehicle technology, they've built a replica of a new Vermont town in New Mexico where they can test the self-driving cars of the future. University of Michigan has set up a similar facility. What the heck are we doing in this state? What are we doing in terms of R&D to position ourselves for the future? What are we doing to position ourselves for the fact that global commerce is changing? You know how Amazon has announced that they're in a situation in which they are promising delivery of product ordered online same day to 50% of the population. The same day. As soon as they announce that, Google says we're going to do the same thing. As soon as they announce that, Walmart says we're going to do the same thing. And they are investing in infrastructure. They are looking for transportation options. They are looking to invest in the commerce of the future. Are they placing that infrastructure in your state? Are you positioned to be competitive against the other states which are playing that game? I'm going to skip through the elements of progress. And I want to get to what I think is the most significant point. When the young lady stood up here and talked about car sharing and talked about the number of people riding bicycles below the age of 25, you know what really changes everything about the future of transportation is the next generation. And this could be about 3 more minutes to close because I know Amy's getting freaked out there. So let me ask a question and look around the room with a show of hands. How many of you, the very first computer course you ever took involved learning COBOL, BASIC, or Fortran? Hold up your hands, look around the room. Look at all us baby boomers. We are the only generation in the history of mankind who ever met the punch card. There's nobody like us. Do not fold, spindle, or mutilate. We don't even know what spindle means 30 years later. I'm 55 years old. My great-grandparents never had to deal with any of this stuff. All the billions of years, you know, that we have been on the planet, or 1,000 years, depending on your religious point of view, we never had to deal with technology. My sons are 1921. They have never known a world without the internet. They've never known a world for the last 10 years in which they haven't had a mobile device which lets them interact with the world in profound ways. Do we think they are going to interact with transportation the way that we do? You know, we went through a lot with technology. My son came down to the home office one day. He said, Dad, you know, you used to play this game on your computer. You don't play it much anymore. And he said, I used to watch over your shoulder. And I could never quite figure out, you know, what the purpose of the game was, what the goal was, why you were playing this, what you were doing. You know what he was talking about? He'd come down and I'd go into MS-DOS from within Windows. He thought it was a game. So what has happened here? We feel blindsided by technology. We feel overwhelmed by technology. A lot of us in the room will react to the concept of autonomous vehicles and rapid advancement in technology with what Ogden Nash observed. Progress is great, but it's gone on way too long. But we live in a transformative period of time. Here's a little cartoon that puts it in perspective. It's about 2 more minutes to close. Amy's over there. Okay, Dad, you've loaded the disk. Here's a kid helping his dad install some software. Transfer the file to here, double click to open. And the last frame really puts in perspective the very unique period of time in which we find ourselves today. See, Dad? That's how you install an internet porn filter. He's helping the father install the internet porn filter to keep the kid out of the porn. So my point is, we are very unique when it comes to the future. We don't like the future. We don't like to hear about the future. We get wound up by the future. Progress is great. It's gone on way too long. This next generation is fundamentally different. They thrive in change. They thrive in innovation. They thrive in new ideas. Half the global population at this point in time is under the age of 25. Do we not think they're going to change things? They're globally wired. They're entrepreneurial. They're collaborative. And they are now coming into industries and saying, we're going to change it up. We're going to Uberize the transport industry. You know, in Singapore, we're talking about car sharing. And the number of people who have stopped buying cars because the number of people who are into car sharing business models is accelerating at a rapid pace. We are talking about X prizes involving the advancement and the acceleration of autonomous driving technology such that we might not barely recognize the world 10 years out. So what do? Some people see a trend and see a threat. Innovators see the same trend and see an opportunity. You know what, in this world there's three types of people. There are those who watch it happen. There are those who make it happen. And there are those who sit back and go, whoa, where'd that come from? And where's Colorado going to be with transportation in 10 years? Are you going to be one of those states that's going to sit back and go, whoa, where did that come from? We didn't realize the future of tourism, the future of industry, the future of oil and gas, the future of mining would involve a lot of sophisticated, intelligent transportation technology. We did the right things. What you need to do is you need to think big, start small, scale fast. So I'll leave you with 10 words. Observe. We don't get to spend enough time to think about the future. Think about what's going on. We live in a period of absolutely transformative time. I could take that energy video and I could substitute in the industry of transportation, and we're dealing with the same industry issues. What happens in a world where the customer is in charge of how they use stuff? What do we need to change? Where do we need to take some risks? Where do we need to dare? Where do we need to banish? That type of thinking that I had with the auto executives in Stuttgart, Germany, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. We get phrases such as, it won't work, or it's too risky, or we can't do that here, or we're not going to try to take on the challenge. Where do we try? Where do we try to advance ourselves in the future? Where do we question? We develop assumptions and habits and routines. Where do we focus and grow? How do we link the economic future of this state to the rapid advancements occurring with every single mode of transport, every single concept of transport, every single business model with transport? What are we going to put as a stake in the ground? What do we need to do? You do those 9 things, you get to the 10th most important word of innovation of all, and that's enjoy. Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.